thank you all for coming today. When Selena asked me to come and speak at USEF, I thought, well, maybe 5 or 10 people will show up, and the room is full. And so I'm a little bit nervous to all of you, and I appreciate you coming today. And I hope that what I share will be useful to you, but I hope it will inspire you in some way to reach for your own dream and your own goal. And as Selena said, this is not a study session, so you can close your notebooks and you can put away your pens and just relax and think about your life for a minute and your dreams, and remember some important points that I want to share with you today that are just my own important points, but I hope that you'll use them in your life too, and that you will feel like that you can take something away from this for your own life too. I want to introduce myself a little bit, just so you know who I am. I recognize a number of faces here that I've seen before. I think I've seen you here at USEF before, or at these student fairs, and maybe I have seen you at the U.S. Embassy at the visa interview window. But I want you to forget that I'm an embassy employee for just a minute. I'm just a guy, okay? I'm just this guy who lives in Nepal, and I work here in Nepal. And I want you just to get to know me a little bit, so that you feel like you know someone a little bit, okay? And I'm not here representing the United States government officially, so everything I say here today is my own opinion, is my own thought, and it's not like someone else is telling me to say this. So I take responsibility for my own words today, and I just want to tell you a little bit about my life so that you know kind of where I came from and how I got here. So I was born and raised in the United States, and I want to show you a map. I'm sure you've seen a map like this before of the United States, and many of you probably hope to study in the United States one day. And the first thing you should know is that the United States is a big country, and there's lots of different places in the United States. And so many of you might be studying in New York or Washington, D.C. or Chicago or somewhere in the Midwest. Many of you might be going to Texas down here, or maybe even to California or Seattle or Portland. And many of you might be looking at small schools in Iowa or Minnesota or even South Dakota. I grew up in the state right here, the state, it's called Utah. And Utah is in the mountains, mostly. And it's kind of like Kathmandu. There's tall mountains all around it. It's in the middle of the Rocky mountain range. But I grew up in a very, very small town. And it's right here in the corner of Utah. It's about 1 hour and 10 minutes by car to Las Vegas, Nevada. But that's the closest big city in the United States. Otherwise, there's nothing there. It's a desert, and there's just one little town in the middle of the desert there, and that's where I grew up. So I'm from a very small place. I didn't grow up in a big city. My parents were not wealthy at all. They're not rich. They're, we call it lower middle class in the United States. That means they have lower income. And my brother and sisters do not like to travel. They hate traveling. They think it's too hard and too difficult. And my brother, he has never left the United States. He's only been in the United States. He doesn't even want to get on an airplane and go to Europe or Japan or something like that. He has no interest. And so I grew up in a small town, and when I was young, I had a globe, a globe with a map of the world. We now have Google Maps, and Google Maps is great. But when I was young, I had a globe in my bedroom, and it stood on my little desk by my bed. And at night, I would just look at the globe and I would spin it around and around. I'd look at all the different countries that are in the world, and I would just think to myself, there's a whole world out there, and I want to see it. And most of my friends still live in the very small town where I came from. When I finished class 12, there were 325 of us who graduated from class 12 together from the same school. Of those 325, there are 280 that still live in that very same small town, and it's been 20 years since I finished my +2. So most of my friends who are from my school days still live in the very same small town, and they haven't left much, and they don't travel much. I don't know why I'm so different like that. I don't know why I came to Earth with this idea that I have to get out and see the world, but I did, and that's who I am. And this past year, I traveled to my 48th country on the 5th continent. So I've been a lot of places in the last 20 years. But I want to share with you kind of a little bit about that. So I grew up in a very big family. I have 50 cousin brothers and sisters on my dad's side, and another 30 on my mom's side. And we have a very big family. And I grew up in a very religious household, a very conservative Christian household, and religion was very, very important in my family. And there was really no talk or interest about traveling and learning about what it meant to be a Hindu or a Sikh or a Muslim or a Jain or a Shinto or a Parsi or a Zoroastrian or anything like that. There was no talk of that. In my household, there was only Christianity. There was nothing else. There was no talk of learning a different language. In the United States, many people speak Spanish as a second language. But I didn't want to learn Spanish. And so I took French classes in high school, and I really wanted to learn to speak French. And the first place I wanted to go to was France. And I don't know why, I was just fascinated with France. I thought France was just the greatest country. They have good cheese, they speak this beautiful language, they have a beautiful country, there's lots of castles and beaches, and the food is really great. So France sounded really great to me. So after I finished my +2, while I was in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th class, I worked a part-time job while I was studying. And I saved my money for 4 years. And so after I completed my +2, after I graduated, I went to France. And I used my own money, and I paid for my own trip to go to France. But while I was in France, I also went to Switzerland and Italy. And those are really great countries too. And I realized, oh yeah, there are so many great and interesting places to go to. And I can't focus just on France. My life changed though. When I was 19 years old, I got this opportunity to do volunteer work in India for 2 years. And so when I was 19 and my parents paid all my expenses, it was my own money. No one paid me to do this. It was my own money, and my parents and grandparents helped support me. And I went to India for 2 years. And I worked in orphanages, I worked in leper colonies, I worked in Mother Teresa homes for people who were dying of tuberculosis and people who were dying from HIV/AIDS. And you can imagine what a shock this was for a boy who grew up in a very small town to all of a sudden show up in Calcutta in this huge city. My jaw was like this for a long time. And, my eyes were wide open. I had never seen anything like this before in my life. And mean, if you've been to Calcutta, you know that there are many rich and well-educated people there, and there are many extremely poor people there. And the difference between the rich and the poor was so great. I was not used to seeing that. In the United States, even if you're rich, you're not that rich, but even if you're poor, you're not that poor. You know, most people live kind of in the middle. I'd never seen poverty like this. I'd never seen people living on the streets. And I mean eating and washing their clothes and bathing and raising their children on the side of the street, on the sidewalk. Luckily here in Kathmandu, you don't see it that often either. I know it's there. But in Calcutta, it's really there. It's really there. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And as I did my volunteer work, and as I talked with people, and as I got to know people in Calcutta who were Hindus, or Buddhists, or Jains, or Muslim, I began to see a different side of life. And I realized that, you know, life in my small town is not how everybody lives. And I knew that when I was growing up. I realized that, but I didn't really understand what that meant. And so I saw that for the first time in India. I went on to travel all over India when I was, during those 2 years that I was in India. I lived in Calcutta for 5 months. I lived in Delhi for about 8 months. I lived in Goa down here for 4 or 5 months, and I spent 8 months in Bangalore. And then during that time, I traveled all around South India, all through Andhra, to Mumbai, around Delhi, and I came to Kathmandu, actually, in October 1994. On October 5th, 1994, I came to Nepal for the first time. And I wrote in my journal that day, and I still have my journal. And back then, Nepal was quite different, and India was quite different in 1994. But I wrote in my journal that I had landed in this beautiful paradise when I flew to Kathmandu. And I just thought Kathmandu was the greatest place. Mostly because I had been living in India. And so Kathmandu was not so crowded, and not so dirty, and not so noisy, and not so polluted, and the people were really nice, and you had good food here, and I thought Kathmandu was great. And I spent 2 months here in the fall of 1994 in Kathmandu, and I came back again 2 different times in 1995. And I love Nepal so much, and I still love Nepal, and I've been here now in Nepal this time for 2 years, and I've been supremely happy here, and I really love your country. It's a great place, and I'm going to miss Nepal very much when I leave. But that started, this 2 years in India started something in my life that made me realize, yeah, you know, even though I came from a very small town, and even though my family was not at all rich, and even though most people in my town never want to leave my town, I realized that I could, and that I wanted to, and that it was important for me to do that, to meet other people from all around the world, to get to know different cultures, different languages, to know people of different religious backgrounds, to know people of different economic backgrounds. That kind of exchange of ideas is crucial, I think, for our whole planet. We have many, many issues that I think we face today in the world, and we can solve our differences and problems, but we have to know each other first. We have to understand a little bit about each other first in order to come to an agreement. while I was in Nepal in 1994 and in Delhi in 1995, I met some American families who worked for the U.S. Embassy. And I met them and I said, "What do you do?" And they talked to me about their job working at the U.S. Embassy and how they moved from country to country every 3 to 4 years. And they raised their children overseas, not living in one place. And to me, a light bulb went on. And I said, this is the job for me. This is what I want. I want to do this. And so I would ask them questions, and they would tell me that, yeah, this is a great job if you like this, and you should try for it, you should do it. Now, this job is not easy to get in the United States. It has nothing to do with who you know in Washington, D.C. It has nothing to do with how rich your parents are, or what school you attended, or what kind of connection that you have in Washington, D.C. It has nothing to do with this. The State Department hires people through a series of exams. And if you pass the first exam, then you go to the second exam. And if you pass the second exam, then you go to the third. And if you pass the third, then you go to the fourth. And if you pass the fourth, then they put your name on the list, and they may call you. Maybe. It's not guaranteed. So I started taking this exam, and I failed the first 2 times. I didn't pass. And I was really discouraged. And I didn't know what I should do. And I looked at all different kinds of options. But I just felt in my heart that I should do this. I should really try this, you know. And so then I was going to college. I was going to university. And I was studying Arabic. And my major was Middle East Studies. And I was doing the history, politics, literature, philosophy, religions of the Middle East. I was studying everything about the Middle East. And then September 11th happened. September 11th, 2001. And I saw something in my country that I didn't like. And that was that so many people had a negative reaction toward Muslims. Now, it is true that the terrorists who attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, they claimed to be Muslim, but in my view, they were so extreme that they had lost sight of their religion and their faith. But I didn't like how my country kind of reacted to that in some way. And I felt like I needed to make a difference. I needed to work to change those perceptions and to work to build a little bit of peace and understanding. So I thought, well, one way I can do this is in the Foreign Service, in the State Department, working at embassies. I can interact with people, I can show them a different side of my country, and then I can talk to people in the United States and to my friends about my experiences. And I thought that that might help change people's perceptions of each other. And so I started again. I thought, okay, I'm going to start over one more time. I'm going to try one last time to get into the Foreign Service. I'm going to try one more time, the exam process. So before 2001, there were about 10 to 20,000 people per year who took the first exam to get in the Foreign Service. But after September 11th, in the year of 2001, 2002, there were 80,000 people who took the entrance exam, exam number 1. So of the people who took exam number 1, only 10,000 passed. And then of the people who took exam number 2, the 10,000 people who took exam number 2, only 2,000 made it to the third part. And from the third part, only 1,200 made it to the fourth part. And finally, of those people that took the exam, they hired 425. So there were 425 slots from the 80,000 people who took the exam. Who's a mathematician in here? Who's doing math? What's the percentage? What percentage of people actually got? 5%? Try again. About 0.5%. 0.5%. Thank you. Of all the people who started taking the exam process, only 0.5% actually got a position with the State Department. And when I was one of those 425, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. This doesn't happen to someone who's from a small town in the United States. This kind of thing doesn't happen. Nobody I had ever known in my whole life had ever gone through this process and took the exam and actually made it. No one. Not one person. Now, since I've joined the Foreign Service, I have met one other person from my town who also did the same thing. And he was 3 or 4 years younger than me, so he came up a little bit after I did. He took it in a different year. And I don't know what the stats were for his year. But for my year, that's what it was. And so it just opened up so many opportunities for me. Now, this was a major accomplishment. It was a major dream. It was a dream come true. It was more than I could ever picture happening for me, coming from a small town. It was like I had won the lottery. It was like I had won this huge thing. Out of all the people in the United States, out of all the people who took the test, I couldn't believe that I was one of the 425. And so when I got into the State Department in the year 2005, I was up here. I was on high. I couldn't believe it. I felt so good. You know what's going to come next, right? My first assignment came. And my first assignment took me to a little tiny country in Africa called Djibouti. Have you ever heard of Djibouti in your life? No, neither had I. I never thought I would ever say the word Djibouti in my life. And here I was going to live there for 2 years. I couldn't believe it. I felt like I had accomplished this major dream, only to be sent down to the bottom of humanity. But that was the beauty of it, though, right? I mean, I joined the Foreign Service to be sent to the far-flung corners of our planet. I joined the Foreign Service because I wanted to see the world and see places that no one would ever go. And I joined the State Department because I wanted to learn new things and go to different places and learn new languages. I thought, well, yeah, I mean, this is the whole reason I wanted to go. I never thought it would take me to Djibouti, but on the other hand, that was the amazing thing, was that here I was going to this really different place. Well, something happened in Djibouti, and that was I fell in love with the place. Okay, there's nothing in this country, Djibouti, okay? There's nothing there. It's a country of volcanic rock. It doesn't have any trees. Nothing grows there. It's just a port, but it's very important because Ethiopia, this huge country next to it, does not have a port on the ocean. So all of their cargo takes a train to Djibouti, which was a former French colony, and that's how it goes. So the only thing in Djibouti really is this port. and then a bunch of French military people who live there. And I made friends with these French military guys, and they did some amazing and incredible things, exploring the country. And even though Djibouti is a very tiny, tiny country, I saw every corner of it. And it was amazing. I had never done that in any country in my whole life, even my own country, even in the United States. I mean, there are places in the US I still have never been. But in Djibouti, I've been everywhere. I've been on every road in the whole country. And it's an adventure, that's for sure. But the other part of that was I got to go to Ethiopia a lot, because all the flights go from Djibouti to Ethiopia, and then from Ethiopia they go out to other countries. So my family and I got to go to Ethiopia a lot. Now, when I went to Djibouti, my wife and I, we had 2 of our own children. But when we went to Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia, we started talking to people that we knew there, and we heard about the large number of children whose parents had died from HIV/AIDS. And in Ethiopia, at that time in 2007, there were 5 million orphans. That means children under the age of 12 whose both mom and dad had died. 5 million. And so my wife and I talked a lot, and we decided that we wanted to adopt one child from Ethiopia. And adoption is never easy. There's always a lot of complications, a lot of issues. Does everybody here understand adoption? You know what I mean when I say adoption? Yeah. It's a term that we use in the United States. I'm not sure how well that term translates. But we decided to adopt a little boy from Ethiopia. And I wanted to bring a picture, but I don't know if it's up yet. Oh, maybe. We'll see if this photo works or not. But I wanted to show you a picture of my family so that you can see my wife and my children and my little boy who's from Ethiopia. You know, he has, my other 3 children have blonde hair and blue eyes, and my little boy from Ethiopia has very black skin, very, very black, curly hair, black eyes. He does not look like us. But he's part of our family. He is my son. He is my son. And this will pull up in a minute, probably. It takes a while to upload. But, so this really amazing thing happened. I went to Djibouti and ended up in Ethiopia, and my family changed in a way that I never expected. And this is my son right here. His name is Yared. This is in Jaipur. We went to Jaipur last October over Dasai holiday. And these are my other 3 children right here. This is my wife, and that's my little boy, Yared. He's cute if you can see his face better. After Djibouti, after 2 years of living in Djibouti, my family and I had this really cool opportunity to go live in another country again for another 2 years. It'll load up in a minute. But we got to live in Sydney, Australia for 2 years. And Sydney is unlike any other city I have ever lived in my life. Has anybody been to Sydney here? I know there's a big Nepali community in Sydney, and so I wondered if anybody had been here. Does anybody have brother or sister or cousins or family in Australia? Where? Where? In Sydney? Oh, see? Where else? In Melbourne? Good. There was someone else back here. Who else raised their hand? Yeah, where? In Sydney? Sydney. There's a big Nepali community in Sydney. And there's lots of different communities in Sydney, actually. Sydney has Armenians and Lebanese and Chinese and Indonesians and Filipino and Vietnamese and Malays, and of course Indians and Nepalis and Sri Lankans and Bengalis, and I could go on and on and on and on and on. Sydney has people from all over the world living there, just in Sydney, not even the rest of Australia, but just in Sydney. And so this was a city where our neighbors were, on this side were from India, and our neighbors on this side were from Armenia, and our neighbors on this side were Italian, and the ones behind them were Greek. And so, and here we were, this American family, you know, with a boy from Ethiopia living in Sydney. And we fit right in. It was great. Because everyone was from somewhere else. And yet they were Australian too, and that's kind of what makes Sydney very interesting and unique. And Sydney was wonderful. It was a great city to live in. There's always lots to do, lots of entertainment, lots of great beaches. It's really a beautiful city. And if any of you ever get to go to Australia, please go to Sydney, because it is great. There's a lot of great places in Australia, though. It's a great country. It's big and huge and wonderful. But it was really wonderful to live in a city where there were people from all over the world living. And so you would always smell lots of different food when you walk down the street. You know, you could walk down and you would have the Korean food place, and then you'd have the Moroccan food place, and then you'd have the Brazilian food place. I mean, right there in one city, you could eat around the globe, you know, it was great. But I learned a lot about, you know, having friends and neighbors from all different countries, and having your children attend, you know, a school where there are lots of different languages spoken, and there are lots of different people from all over the world. That was really wonderful. After Australia, I kind of made full circle, and I ended up back here in Nepal. And so it feels like I've kind of made this big circle of a journey, you know. I started my international experience in India and Nepal, and now I'm here again about 20 years later, 19 years later. And I've really seen a lot of this world, a lot of this beautiful planet, and I've met so many great and interesting people. But I want to talk about Nepal and how special this place is to me, and how fortunate I feel to be here and to have lived here with my family for the last 2 years. And I want to thank you all as Nepali citizens for being welcoming and warm and the wonderful people that you are. And I hope you never lose that. I hope you, wherever you might go in your life, wherever country you might end up, whatever job you may end up doing, even if you just stay here in Kathmandu for the rest of your life, I hope you always be that wonderful Nepali person that is open and accepting and interested in other people and in other cultures and in other beliefs. I wanted to close by just sharing a few of my thoughts, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if you have any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And then I brought chocolate for you, so, from Switzerland. First, I want to share what my thought is, and I've kind of mentioned it, about dreams. We all have dreams, right? We all have goals that we want to accomplish. You all have this thing that you're working for right now studying abroad, studying in the United States. It's a great opportunity. I hope each of you get it. But I also want to remind you that an interesting happens when you accomplish a dream. Something changes in you. You have the confidence that you've accomplished something great in life. But then you have this question of, well, now what? You know, so if you get to the United States and you show up, it's going to be kind of like, now what? I'm here. I guess I'll study, but then what? You know, and maybe the place that you get to at your school in Ohio or Nebraska or Oklahoma or wherever, Louisiana, maybe it's different from what you expected. And you might show up going, this is not what I had in mind. This is not what I thought the United States was going to be like. This is very different. So remember that. Remember that if you may accomplish your dream, but your dream may always turn out the way you thought it was going to be. Just like I did. When I finally got a job with the State Department, then I was sent to Djibouti. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is not what I thought. But it happened to me. And I made the most of it. So, you know, wherever you end up, it's not going to be like you thought it was going to be. But that's okay. Keep going forward. Keep setting goals for yourself. Make more dreams. Make new goals in your life. Set different dreams and work for them. The thing about dreams, too, is you have to work hard. It's not easy. It doesn't just come to you like that. You have to work hard. So keep working hard. Be open to new ideas. Like when I got to Djibouti, I had to ask myself, well, what am I going to do? You know, this is not what I was hoping for. Am I going to quit my job? Am I just going to call it off and say, never mind, I don't want to be here? No. I said, well, I'm here. Let me make the most of it. And then amazing things happened. So that can happen for you too. But you have to be open to that. Maybe this door will close, but another door will open. Or maybe you go through the door that's open, but it's not what you thought it would be. But don't give up. Just keep going. Because something else will happen, and you realize, oh yeah, that was good. It was a good decision. It was a good thing. One thing I've seen here in Nepal is people feel the pressure to do what their parents want them to do, or what their family wants them to do, or what society or culture wants them to do. I grew up in a very similar environment. Though it was in the United States, I grew up, as I said, in a very religious family with very strict standards and very definite ideas about how things should be done. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, what do I really want? What do I really want? And it takes courage to ask yourself that question, because often the answer to that question means that you might hurt people's feelings, or that you might never see your family again. There are many, many Nepali students in the United States who are so glad they got a visa to the United States, but their parents don't get a visa. And they never see their parents for a long time. And this can be a cause of great disappointment. But you have to ask yourself, what do I really want? And so you have to be willing sometimes to take some of those negative side effects with your dream. Because your dream is not going to mean that everybody turns out happy and perfect. Your dream might mean that you are happy, that you're accomplishing your goal, but you might have to pay a price for that. And sometimes that price might be separation from your family, from your friends. So that's why it's very important to ask yourself, what do you really want? Don't be afraid to ask the question, because then you will start to really think through in a realistic manner of what does your dream mean? What does it mean? What are the consequences it's going to be? And last, be happy with what you have. Be happy with what you have in life. It's fine to have goals, it's fine to have dreams, it's fine to work toward them. But if you're not happy now with what you have, then you're not going to be happy even when you do accomplish your dream. So be happy with what you have now and realize that everything that you have is a gift. And that, yes, there are people who are going to be richer than you, but there are always people who are going to be poorer than you. So be grateful for what you have. Because someone else might look at your situation and say, oh, I wish I could be just like you. And you might look at someone else's situation and say, oh, I wish I could be just like that person. Don't be unhappy like that. Be happy with where you are. And then use that to accomplish your dream, to achieve your goals, and to move forward in your life in the way that you want it. I did it. I came from a very small, underprivileged background. I did it, and I know you can too. I wish you all the best in all of your life. Wherever you go, whatever you do, I wish all the best for you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions I can answer for anybody? Yeah.
Is it Ethiopian boy here in Nepal?
Yeah.
All of them?
Yeah, they've all been living here the last 2 years. They go to Lincoln School.
Sir,
yeah.
why is this exam very hard for you? Why is this exam very hard for you?
Why is the exam hard? It's very competitive. And, you know, it's like taking the GRE or the LSAT or the MCAT or the SAT. These questions are meant to be hard because they want to get the best people, and so they make the questions very, very hard.
Is this a combination of all these?
It's a combination of U.S. history, U.S. politics, management, economics, geography, culture, religion, everything. And then the second stage, you're competing against 15 other people in a room, and you have to analyze projects, and you have to analyze different scenarios, and you have to give your input, and you have to make solutions in a very short time. So it's a competitive, very competitive process.
Sir, how many places have you been in Nepal?
How many places have I been here in Nepal? Not a lot. You know, my job is very busy, so I have to be here in Kathmandu most of the time. My wife and kids have been a lot of places. They're out having fun while I'm at work in the office, paying for their trip to Pokhara and Kathmandu and Muktinov. They're having a great time, and I'm at the office at my desk. But I think my favorite place that I've been to in Nepal probably was, we hiked from what's that place called right before Dulikhel? Kavre. I hiked from Kavre up to Namabuddha, and then from Namabuddha to Dulikhel. And in one day, which is a nice hike. But on that day, the weather was so beautiful, and I took the picture that you may have seen earlier. I don't know if it'll load up or not, but I took that picture on my profile, and I still love that. I still remember that day when we had a clear view of the mountains with the villages, in between from Namabuddha. We have a good view. It's lovely. That was probably one of my favorite things. Yeah, that picture right there. That's one of my Nepal pictures. So, yeah.
You have been to different countries and you have talked to many people. So, according to you, what is that one thing that's really necessary to deal with international people or the non-familiar people?
I think it's humility. When you realize that, I did anyway. I showed up in India for the first time in Calcutta. And I realized I'm nothing. I'm nothing. There's 15 million people in this city, and that's just one city in India. And the whole country has 1 billion people. And who am I? I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I don't make a difference to anybody in this city. They don't care who I am. They never even knew I existed. But once you realize that, then you realize that people are pretty much the same. That everyone has hopes, everyone has dreams, everyone wants their children to be happy and fed and clothed and cared for and loved. Everyone wants to do better in life. And then you realize that, yeah, that's how most of the world is. That most of the people in these countries, that's all they want. They just want peace. They want a little bit of prosperity. They want their children to be better. I think, and when you come from that humble place that, you're nothing, it doesn't matter who you are, then you can really start to make connections with people. Because if you go to somewhere and you act like you know everything and that you're richer than everybody, then nobody wants to even talk to you. But having that humble heart really opens a lot of doors. And then people are nice. And you realize that people are good, no matter what country they live in. I always shock people in the United States when they say, what's one of your favorite countries that you've been to? And without a doubt, I always say, well, Yemen. Yemen was one of my most favorite countries I've ever been to. Yemen, in the United States, people have this idea of it's a bunch of terrorists living in the country, right? And that's where a lot of the terrorists come from, is Yemen. But Yemen was really a wonderful country. And the people were so nice and welcoming and warm. And the country was beautiful and amazing. So, yeah. I hope I answered your question.
So one word that describes Nepal from...
Say it again.
One word that describes Nepal from...
One word. That's a very hard question. One word. Not peaceful. You're testing my English language. And I'm a little embarrassed because I can't say one word. Yeah. Well, I would say adventurous. Nepal, living in Nepal is an adventure. Driving down the road is an adventure. Eating the food is an adventure. But it's adventurous.
Can you speak Nepali?
म नेपाली बोल्दैछु किनभने हरेक दिन अमेरिकी राजदूतावासमा म नेपाली बोल्ने मान्छेसँग कामसँग भन्नुपर्छ त्यस कारणले म अलिकति थोरै मात्रै आउँछ अरू केही प्रश्न छ Your wish.
Okay, you have traveled so many places, and maybe, do you? I wanted to ask, do you have any regrets on some kind of wish you could have done, or you should have done in your young age, or
Yes.
something like that?
Yes. When I was in college, I did a study abroad program to India, and I should have done more. Every summer, I should have been traveling. I should have learned more language. I should have taken the opportunity. I had a few opportunities to go study in the Middle East. There was one study program in Jordan, and one in Morocco, and one in Tunisia. And I didn't take that opportunity, and I should have.
And that time was was traveling more important or the family for you?
Money was the limiting factor for me. It was budget. I couldn't quite afford, I didn't have enough money at that time. When most students in the United States, when they go to college, they don't have a lot of money. They're not working. Their parents cannot afford to pay, $8,000 for them to go live in Morocco for 6 months. And my family could not do that, and I didn't have that money. I had spent a lot of my money living 2 years in India, and so I didn't feel like I could ask my mom and dad for another few $1,000s to go live in Jordan for a semester. But I should have found a way. Because those opportunities will come to you to go live somewhere else, to go learn another language, to go meet other people. You should take those opportunities. You should. I've tried to make up for it now with my job and my own money. I can do a little bit better now. But at that time, when I was young, I didn't have a wife, I didn't have children, I was free, so free. I could have gone, but I didn't. I should have done that. That's a good question. Thank you for asking.
So,
Yeah.
what is the most inspiring thing for you?
The most
Inspiring thing.
inspiring thing?
What keeps you going on for your dreams?
When I travel, when I go to a new country, for example, about 3 weeks ago, I went to Oman for the first time. Oman is not too far from here, but I went there for the first time. And I was inspired by it. It's a beautiful country. It's not green like Nepal. It doesn't have the beautiful Himalayas like Nepal. But it has other things that are unique and beautiful. And that's what keeps me going. I keep traveling because I see more and more and more beautiful things. And I meet more and more and more interesting people. That's what keeps me going. That's what inspires me. Because there's always something more. There's always new places to discover. Thanks. Yeah.
It's great to have a conversation with you, sir.
Thank you.
And as you have international experience, how much secure the world is going to be, that the world we are living tomorrow, from your opinion?
That's a good question. I don't know. But I think it's up to us. It's up to you and me to make it better, to make it more secure. We cannot leave it to the politicians. We cannot leave it to the people who are greedy, who are corrupt. We have to do it ourselves. We have to take control of that. And I have hope for Nepal. Nepal faces a lot of problems right now. You all know this much better than I do. But I have hope for Nepal because I come to USEF. I meet people just like you. And I have hope for your country because I know that you in this room have the power and the ability to make it better. You can do it. You should do it. You have it. You have the skills, you have the talent, you have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have that ability within you to make Nepal a better place. Please do it. Please do it. And I'll help you too. We'll work together, okay? Yeah.
Do you miss your country or hometown or family when you are in apartment?
Of course I miss my family. Of course I do. I miss my parents a lot. But that is a price I have to pay for my dream. And what's nice is that I tell my parents to come visit me. So they get to see some new places. And rather than me going back to their home, I make them meet me somewhere. So, yeah, of course I do. Yeah.
Has it been easy for your children, changing schools and friends every 2 years?
Children are so adaptable. They don't know anything different. They have grown up changing schools every 2 to 3 years. That's all they know. They don't realize that some people live in one place for 30 years. And I hope that never changes. Although eventually they'll realize that I dragged them all over the planet, and maybe they'll hate me for it. But I'm willing to take that risk. it's easy for them because that's all they know. So, yeah.
Did you always know that you were going to grow up to become a traveler of some sort, or were you distracted in any way, something like that?
I mean, when I was young, I wanted to. I always wanted to travel. I always wanted to get out and see the world. But I didn't know if it would actually happen. I didn't know. That was part of my goal. That was part of my dream, was to try to make that happen. And luckily, my dream came true. But it doesn't always happen. Yeah.
Comparing today's Kathmandu with the Kathmandu of '94.
Yes.
Is today's Kathmandu less appealing to you because it's more crowded, dirty, noisy?
Nepal is an adventure, like I said, and part of the adventure is that things change all the time. And so, in some ways, Nepal is worse off now than it was in 1994, but in other ways, it's more interesting and it's different, and you just have to, accept it for what it is. I can't make it back to how it used to be in 1984. I loved it in 1984, but I love it now too. So, yeah, things are different, but that's okay. Yeah.
Out of those 80,000 people, 425 were lucky at whatever the others. If we are some among the others, then what should we do?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of said that. Be open to change and new ideas. Maybe you're going on this direction with your dream, and it doesn't work out. The door closes. But along the way, maybe there was another door that will lead you in a different direction. And don't be afraid of that. It's okay. If it doesn't work out, something else will. But you have to be open to that. So keep your mind open, keep your eyes open. Because maybe the path that you think you're going on will lead you down a different path.
In our kind of family, in this family, our parents really hope that their children can be the best one, or maybe that 425 out of 80,000, but everyone doesn't make that, And it's kind of difficult situation sometimes in family, talking to the family members. So how can we actually convince them that we can be better if not the best, but we can still be the best?
I think you have to be true to yourself. I said that earlier. I said, ask yourself, what do you really want? And if what you really want comes through to your parents, they'll understand. They will accept it. Maybe it will take some time. But if you are going to do what you really want and you are true to yourself and your goal and your dream, then the rest of it won't matter. They may have some hurt feelings for a while, but they'll get over it. Yeah.
Which college did you attend?
I attended the University of Utah in Salt Lake City, Utah. The Olympic Games, the Winter Olympic Games were held there in 2002, right after I graduated. And it was a great school. There were not many Nepali students when I was there, but there were lots of Indian students. It has a very good engineering program, has a very good math and science program. It's a wonderful school. And like Nepal, it's in the mountains, kind of in a valley with mountains. So, yeah.
What inspired you to study about this aspirating language?
I think I saw it as an opportunity to, number one, have a good career, whether in business or in academia or in politics. I saw that as a good option. But also I felt like there was no understanding in my country of what the Middle East was really like. And I wanted to learn for myself what it was. So that's kind of what inspired me to do that.
What's the difficult life after 9/11? And people didn't, like you said, that you wanted to change the people perception about the Middle East. And how difficult was it? Because that
It is difficult. It takes time. People have their opinions, and they don't like to change their opinions. It takes time. But I talk about it, I write about it, I take photographs about it, I share my photographs. Slowly, people's opinions change because they see something. They see something different. So.
Do you wanted to ask questions for Mr. Pat?
Don't be scared. Yeah.
As you all know that you have traveled many countries in your lifetime, what extraordinary thing you have experienced in Nepal in comparison to other countries?
I think one of the best things about Nepal that maybe you don't find in other countries is the opportunity to go walking through a village, and the people in the village will invite you into their home, and they'll give you some food, even though it's not a big meal, and they'll be nice to you, and they'll be friendly to you, and even though they don't speak your language, they don't care. They're happy to have you in their home. They have that hospitality, and that's rare. Not every country is like that. People will help you if you ask them, but in Nepal, what's different is that the Nepali people in Nagao, they just say, come in. And they don't know who you are. You're a stranger. But and you go and they feed you, dal bhat or dal bhat tarkari, and you have this experience. That's what's unique and wonderful about Nepal. So, have you done that before? Have you trekked to Everest Base Camp? Here you are in your own country. Thousands of tourists come to your country every year to trek to Everest Base Camp, and you haven't gone there yourself. You should do it. It's a good experience.
Last question for Mr. Pesh.
Yeah.
So I love traveling as well, but I would like to know that where did you get that determination from? You started making money from 9, 10 to travel France as you told.
I don't know where I got the determination. Some people like to spend their money on clothes. Some people like to spend their money on movies or a car or buying a house or whatever. That's fine. Everyone has their own way of spending their money. And I didn't buy a car. I didn't have nice clothes. I didn't have a nice watch. I didn't care about buying a house. I wanted to travel. So that's what I spent my money on. I saved my money, and that's what I really wanted, and so I saved my money for that. And I think if you really like to travel, unless you're extremely wealthy, which I wasn't, then you have to make a decision. You have to make a sacrifice. Either you can spend your money on A or B or C or D. And I chose to spend my money on travel and not anything else. My friends did all sorts of fun things. They bought boats and they bought fancy cars, and they had nice clothes and they had nice shoes. I didn't care about any of that. I didn't care. I wanted to do my own thing. So that's what I did. So yeah, it's a sacrifice, but it's worth it.
And last words of inspiration for you, Mr. Pesh?
No, I think I said you all are inspiring, actually. I think you and I have a lot of common today. You're here at USEF because you have a goal, you have a dream, you want to see the world for yourself too, don't you? That's why you're here. You want to try it for yourself. And I was there too. I was in your position not that long ago. And so don't give up. Keep going. Keep trying. Maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, but something else will happen. So good luck to all of you. Thank you.